These young people can design and improve any open space. It can be a small area in front of a house, a green roof, a city park, or even a large reserve.
Основным вдохновлением для меня является...
Travel is my main inspiration. I always look for green roofs when I travel around Europe. If I can access them, I go there and almost dig into the soil to see how the plants are doing.
Как там все растения чувствуют.
The heroes of this episode will explain how to become a landscape architect and about the beauty that true professionals create with their own hands. Hi guys, hello.
Привет.
Привет.
What are your names and what are you going to tell us today? Dmitro, Irina, Maxim, we're landscape architects, and in this episode we'll tell you why we like our job and how you can also become a landscape architect.
Ландшафтный архитектор – это творческий человек, который…
A landscape architect is a creative person who both observes landscaping processes and takes part in the process of transforming the landscape itself. There is a new trend in landscape architecture. Many more people are interested in this process and are realizing themselves as landscape architects. Landscape architecture does not just imply planting flowers and trees. It is a lengthy process that involves many areas of activity, such as design and engineering solutions. All that put together creates a complete picture. When I was very young, 3 factors influenced me as a novice architect. The first is travel. I learned a lot about different plant cultures and landscaping. The second one is the fact that my parents had a summer house, where I always sowed tomatoes and cucumbers and got really into this process. And the third one is the process itself and the love for plants. I was involved in all kinds of activities. The first one was music. I studied at a conservatory while at school. So I got to travel a lot thanks to the conservatory and the boys' choir. The second is drawing, obviously, which I took up a long time ago. When I was 5, my parents sent me to an art school where I studied drawing until my first year in college.
И я когда увидела первый реализованный свой мостик,
I was so delighted when I saw the first bridge that I designed. I jumped around it, took pictures from all sides. Sadly, I can no longer find those photos. But the delight from seeing the object that you designed on a computer is impossible to describe. It had it the easiest.
мне проще всего.
It's a family business. My mom has been doing this for a long time, and she was gradually leading me up to it. First, she sent me to an art school and was taking me to her objects in the meantime to show how it all worked.
Показывала что да как. Потом по ее же подаче.
Later, I enrolled in an architectural university, which was my idea, though influenced by her, and majored in urban planning focused on landscape architecture.
В ландшафтную архитектуру. Я понимаю, что архитектура…
I understand that landscaping architecture is essentially my life, and I could never give it up because my entire circle of friends is like this, and it's hard for me to imagine being somewhere else.
Такое, что мне сложно представить, что я буду где-то в другом месте.
Все почалось з того, що, мабуть, з дитинства.
It all started with the fact that I was into drawing, creativity and making things from childhood.
Майструвати, створювати. І, мабуть, як наслідок цього я пішов.
As a result, I began going to drawing classes, then to an art school, and at some point in the 8th grade, I realized that I wanted to be an architect.
Саме архітектура. В першу чергу мені…
In architecture, first of all, I like creating objects that will bring joy to someone.
Комусь радість.
To become a landscape architect, you need first of all to enjoy the process itself, plants and architecture. Your education doesn't really matter. Of course, it's nice if you graduated from a Ukrainian or foreign university. But I know people who became successful without a higher education and still have good projects and achievements. First of all, a landscape architect must be able to draw concept art, which is a sketch that can demonstrate the core idea of what the architect wants to achieve and what he can offer to a client. Naturally, reading literature is very important. This will further influence the development of the landscape architect's personality and his taste. After I had made my final choice to become a landscape architect, I enrolled at the Kyiv National University of Construction and Architecture, where I graduated from the Urban Planning Department. The teachers there had a great influence on my choice, as they helped me make the right choice of focusing on landscape architecture. My practical development continued later on at the Landscaping Bureau.
Уже в ландшафтном бюро.
Я поступил именно на архитектуру.
I enrolled specifically in the architecture department. I designed private buildings and everything from the curriculum. But in year 4, I realized that I was more interested in landscape architecture, so I re-enrolled in the urban planning department and started doing what I was more interested in, and what I'm doing now.
Параллельно с обучением
I also took part in competitions in parallel with my studies. I realized that just studying at university was not enough to become a landscape architect. You also need to travel, apply this experience in projects, learn new software, and definitely participate in competitions, because that's the only way to get yourself properly evaluated.
только там могут оценить по-настоящему. Во время обучения я иногда
During my studies, I sometimes asked mom for help when I needed assistance with choosing plants or creating a composition, because she's more experienced and I wanted to learn from that experience. I wanted to take an interesting idea that was ready instead of spending hours with my head buried in books.
какой-то готовый интересный вариант.
Відколи я вирішив, що
Ever since I decided that I wanted to be an architect and it was architecture in its purest form,
в чистому вигляді, я, мабуть,
I started paying more attention to the exact sciences, as architecture is a serious profession.
серйозна професія. Я почав більше уваги приділяти.
I began working harder to master this profession. So the 3-year-long process of getting ready for university began.
Університету. Це не була конкретна підготовка. Я просто ходив в художній.
It was nothing specific. I just attended an art school and studied sciences like maths and physics intensively. In the end, when it was time to enroll into university, I found out they had preparatory courses,
Що там є
which helped me to realize what level of knowledge I needed to study architecture.
зрозуміти рівень, який необхідно мати для того, щоб навчатись на архітектурі. Навчаючись в університеті,
The first thing you realize when studying at university is that you need to know the basic sciences.
проходить кілька років
But
навчання.
after several years have passed, you start thinking about what direction you want to focus your efforts in.
Зусилля. І десь, мабуть,
In year 3 or 4, you realize that there is landscape architecture, volumetric architecture, interior design. For example, I knew that I wasn't interested in interior design.
хочу займатися дизайном інтер'єру, тому що мені це було нецікаво. Ще під час навчання мені запропонували
When I was still at university, I received a job offer to help with certain landscape projects for a customer who did not yet know what he wanted. By gradually developing this topic, while I was still doing my studies, I realized that it's quite an interesting area.
я зрозумів, що це досить цікаве русло.
И на протяжении всего обучения трудностей может быть...
There can be a lot of difficulties during your period of studies. They may also relate to insufficient education. But in any situation, you can set the right accents and get the necessary knowledge in other areas of activity. The initial communication with clients was difficult. Any architect must be able to present their idea and prove that it really is worth putting into practice.
стоящие для того, чтобы ее реализовывать.
Одно из самых первых слов
Teamwork was one of my first difficulties. If you can't work in a team, you won't be able to become an actual fully fledged landscape architect, as you cannot know everything.
ты не можешь. И важно
It is important to hand out roles during the creation of the team. Who is going to be responsible for the plans, visualization, and who is going to put all those blueprints together?
чертежи в одну кучу. Мое основное
My main task is designing green roofs, and I come up against people all the time who are not ready to use new technologies.
применять новые технологии. Вот мы применяем немецкие
We use German technology to make these green roofs, but when we speak with builders, designers, or even customers, they don't understand why it's necessary to use this particular technology.
Основная трудность
So the main difficulty is communicating with customers. It is really hard to win their trust for new technologies and improvement methods.
создание благоустройства.
Мабуть, єдина складність, яка в мене
Perhaps the only difficulty that I had while mastering the profession of landscape architect was overcoming the stereotypes that the university forces on you, and possibly learning certain types of new software.
Первой работой ландшафт
The first landscape project that I am pleased with, and which I will hopefully continue developing is, of course, Pochayna Park, which will continue being developed and built in Kyiv's Obolon district.
Этот процесс очень увлекателен.
This process is very exciting, and I think that any landscape architect wants to be a part of it.
Один из главных
One of my inspirations is music, of course. Music always motivates me to move forward. The results of my work and travel also motivate me.
своей работы и путешествия.
Я помню свой первый проект.
I remember my first project. I was a bit unlucky with it because I had to redo it 7 times.
Это длилось.
It lasted a year and a half. The customer always found something she disliked. There was a barbecue house and a lake, and moving everything back and forth, all the constructions and terrain. It was quite difficult.
Это было достаточно сложно. Компания, в которой я работаю,
The company I worked for previously specialized only in private gardens, but that wasn't enough for me. So I began looking for new ways to express myself and landscape architecture in general. I wanted to design urban space. The use of green roof technology was that small step for me, and now we design and implement it very successfully.
на использование технологий зеленых крыш в городе, и сейчас очень успешно это проектируем и реализовываем. Основным вдохновлением для меня,
Travel is my main inspiration.
когда я езжу по
I always look for green roofs when I travel around Europe. If I can access them,
я иду туда, чуть
I go there and almost dig into the soil to see how the plants are doing.
смотрю, как это все спроектировано. Когда
I examine how it's been designed. When I look at these real-life examples that have existed for decades, it inspires me to implement all that in Ukraine with renewed vigor. If it's been working over there for such a long time, why can't it work here too?
ідеї дуже часто проходять.
I often get ideas from different angles. Sometimes I simply look at analogs of something. First and foremost, the outdoors that surround us. Nature gives us and other architects plenty of tips.
Архітекторів.
Is there a community of Ukrainian landscape architects? Do you communicate with one another? Do you keep in touch?
Связь поддерживаете?
Конечно.
Of course there's a community. We communicate every day and share our experience.
Опытом.
Do you communicate with architects abroad? Do you perhaps follow the trends?
За тенденциями.
Yes, we go to lectures and seminars around Ukraine and abroad, keep in touch with them and even visit them.
Как думаешь?
How will landscape architecture develop in the future in our country?
Я думаю, ми
I think the future of landscape architecture is in people understanding that it's part of the space that they need.
частина того простору, яка їм необхідна. І тоді
Landscape architects will then do everything to create a comfortable space for them.
Рада была
It was nice meeting you. Same.
мы надеемся, что
We hope you liked this episode. Never stop and let's change the world together.
пока.
Bye.